Hey guys, I wanted to do a little intro on the Next Trench trial, and if you're wondering what the heck that is, it's these little challenges we do on the Trench Discord. We've done a few so far, and they're pretty fun. It's just little portfolio building projects. There's no judging or anything, it's just for fun, a little community-based thing. This one is the What's in That Dungeon challenge, and it's a dungeon crawler design event. The deliverables are 2 low-level enemies, 2 mid-level enemies, 1 dungeon boss, and 1 dungeon hero. And I put examples here like rats, bats, goblins for low level. Um, that's kind of like the general thing you see in games. There's nothing to say you can't have a dungeon boss that's like a giant rat or something. Um, the only I like to leave these pretty open. You could also do any genre you want. If you want to do sci-fi or steampunk, go right ahead. It just has to fit these archetypes that we see here. And, we want a dungeon boss to feel powerful, but I also don't want anybody to feel limited where they can't try to flip that on its head. Because, it could be interesting to have a dungeon boss that looks really weak on first glance. You're like, what the heck is this? But then there's something about them that, on second glance, maybe it's like, oh shit, they're really powerful. They have like, I don't know, maybe it's like some weak, uh, super skinny dude, and then he has like this faded giant ghost that comes up behind him, and that's the actual boss. I don't know if you've ever seen Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, but there's this guy that's a part of the vampire hunters, and he's like this weak dude in bed, but he takes this medicine and he becomes like this crazy spirit dude that shoots like these overpowered lasers. I always thought that was super cool though. Yeah, you could try to do something like that if you would like. Yeah, I just wrote here that when we think of these things and like a dungeon crawler, probably you instantly think of like you know the classic thing that's like skeletons and rats and whatnot. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like it is kind of I don't really want to say generic because sometimes it's cool. Like this kind of thing could be really cool, but I think it's totally up to you what you do. But it would be fun to try to give it your own personal twist in some way. Like how can you add something new? It doesn't have to be completely new at all either. It could just be you adding something on to the idea that's there of like a skeleton warrior. Give it some kind of interesting twist. And I have these references from old RPGs and Darkest Dungeon that's newer. But I kind of like these because they're lower poly and the detail isn't all there. So you almost see it like you almost complete the picture in your head. Like looking at this guy is kind of like looking at a cloud. How you complete him in your head, it might be different from how I complete him. So I really like this stuff as like a kickoff point. It, the opposite would be having like a Diablo 4 enemy or character, and I don't feel like that's a great kickoff point. It could be a good reference, but it's not a good kickoff point because it's just too defined. Like there's already so much already being resolved and answered that it might influence us too far at the stage. And early on in this kind of like blue sky phase, we want to be very, very broad and explorative. I have some examples of an interesting twist here. Imps from Elden Ring, to me at least, they serve as goblins in that game. They're low level. You see them often over and over again. They're they're pretty weak, but I mean, if you played Elden Ring, if they like gang up on you and sneak up on you, they're gonna mess you up. But yeah, to me, they basically serve as goblins, and it's kind of cool. Like you see FromSoft do that a lot. Is like they take a classic fantasy trope and kind of give it their own twist. Like you'll never see them do like a Lord of the Rings orc really. Like they always have their own thing they do, which is really neat. Like they might have that that role there, but they never had that exact kind of character, which I think is really cool. And Darkest Dungeon here, they have these. I mean, they want to have vampires, but they didn't just want to do a vampire, so they, obviously extrapolated what is a vampire, and it's blood sucking. So they mixed that with something else that's blood sucking, which is mosquitoes, and they came up with this really interesting result, which is pretty dang cool. Like, I don't feel like I've seen anything like this before, like a mosquito vampire. It's pretty cool. But hopefully those are interesting kickoff points for you. And should be a fun challenge. I have a process steps here I wanted to share quick too. So basically, this is what I would do, and it's just advice for you if you want to know how I do it or want some suggestions. Basically, internalize the brief. What's being asked of me is very important. What are those deliverables? And then breath gathering and research. And that's where, we want to find inspiration and let our imaginations run wild. Play with all the what ifs and start collecting imagery and thinking of like what could you do for each thing. We want to start broad, like, get a PureRef board and just keep adding to it. Whatever you see that's cool on Pinterest or whatever, add. Because it's more cost effective to play with and eliminate ideas in this phase where it's just on a reference board and in our head than it is to do that on paper with pen. You can do that too, it's totally fine. It's just, I feel like it's better to start with imagery first. And then, basically we're creating our own restrictions with this. Like, the brief is pretty vague. It's only asking for these roles. It's not really telling you exactly what they need to be. So we need to create those borders. And basically what I mean by that is I like to think of, designing as a sandbox a little bit. So basically no brief. There's kind of unlimited possibility. It's fun to sketch around with that, but when anything could work, then anything can work, right? It's kind of hard to find a direction. And when we're in this phase of finding reference and ideating and figuring something out, we're slowly adding constraints and borders. And as we continually do that and then start sketching and iterating, we're slowly closing in those borders and finding our design. And yeah, the area that we play within gets smaller and smaller. But yeah, you wanna, or at least I think it's good to try to do as much of that as you can here, rough gathering, and then when you get to sketching, like, be very, very bold. Like, cast the white net super wide. I like the saying of cast the net wide, no two iterations the same. And if you keep them all very separate, I feel like 3 bold iterations are more than enough. You're playing with pose that's very different in each one. Body type could be different, and costuming could be different. And then from there you can mix and match those 3 and come up with even more designs. Yeah, when I say 3 bold iterations, it means bold within the constraints we've created for ourselves. So if we're doing super testosterone goblin, we don't want to have like a skinny super weak one, because that's way on the other side of the scale. We probably want to stay within, if our brief is the super strong testosterone goblin, we probably want to stay within the super strong to the strong bulky, or like average bulky at the smallest. But that way our scale is like slowly moving in, as opposed to this giant scale across the board. We don't want to be going steps back as we constrain the sandbox. We don't want to be going backwards and opening it back up. We want to slowly be moving forward. But if you feel like you are going in the wrong direction, there's no harm in going back. It's just, we ideally want to be honing in and not broadening our scope, because The problem with this here is that we'll never get anywhere. Like we're gonna get lost in the desert and die. um, yeah, you gotta know what you want to do, and this process is a way to do that. Um, it's a way to find, inspiration and then run with that, and then slowly hone in on a design and figure it out. But yeah, I hope that makes sense. Hope that's helpful. It should be really fun. If you want to join the Discord, just let me know and I could send you an invite. There's no really due date on this. Maybe like a month. I think maybe a month and a half, so March 1st would probably be good. Yep, have fun. Thanks. Bye bye.